Thank you.
All right.
All right.
So we've got everybody here. Full committee is present.
Is Susan here?
Yes.
Susan is here.
Okay.
Oh, we just lost. Who? Bob. It's going to be a lot shorter without a chair. Sure how that happened. Well, why don't we give them a minute, and then if we don't see them showing up, Don, if you want to take over for just a couple seconds, yeah,
Sure.
Maybe he'll join us.
I know I can add item number 1. I can handle that one really easy.
Shouldn't be a hassle, huh? Yeah, that's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Is he aware that he's gone?
I would hope so, because he wouldn't be able to see anything or anybody.
Yeah.
Well, when it just freezes, you can still see everything.
Sometimes, but then you can't hear anything. Yeah, it just looks stuck.
Yeah.
But right, yeah, he's just
And that doesn't necessarily mean if you're the one whose internet froze.
oh, there he comes.
Yep.
Right. And
Oh, there, he's still there. So Bob's still on mute with no camera.
right, but that'll come.
There it is, I think.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't know what brought that on, but I just was out of touch for a few moments.
How about it? Well, who among us hasn't been out of touch for a few moments?
True.
So,
All right. So did you do any items of business while I was gone, or?
No, because Bob, I knew you'd come back, so I decided to beg off.
All right. Well, I apologize for that. I don't know what happened, but in any event, our first order of business is the meeting minutes of September 27th.
I move approval. Don?
Okay, we have a motion.
Susan, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes and a second. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it and the minutes are approved. Second item of business is Pleasant View Road reconstruction, preference for a guardrail.
yeah, and let me jump down, maybe past the memo to the Google Earth image, if that's coming up on your screen.
Mhm.
Okay. So Pleasant View Road is kind of behind us. You can see off into Northwestern Stone Quarry. This would be the driveway that goes up to the golf course. And the building that's occupied by PPD, one of the buildings occupied by PPD, has these exposed stone walls. This building development was quarried into a hillside of rock. So there's some exposed rock there. And one of the concerns from the design team was, well, if a vehicle leaves the road, goes over the terrace and over the sidewalk and over just a little bit of extra grass, they could also go over this wall. So there's some design guidance that says, well, if your clear zone is so-and-so, so-and-so many feet wide, you really don't need to do anything extraordinary. But there's also a balance that says, well, unless there's something just very hazardous, then you might want to. And this is kind of in a gray area. There's no clear guidance from federal highways that we could offer. There are some pluses and minuses with putting guardrail along a road. And I tried to list those in my memo. Now I have to zoom in a bit here. That I guess the obvious advantage is if someone goes far enough off the edge, more than 22 feet past the barrier curb, they could be in serious trouble. That would be the advantage. But if they go 6 inches past the barrier curb, they might also be in trouble because guardrails have their own inherent dangers.
Right. So I do have a few questions. This is Robert.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Did I read correctly that at least along a portion of this area, there would be some type of wall or guarding to prevent the pedestrians and from falling down into a pit?
Yeah, let me go to the typical section. And so you can kind of see where the barrier curb and then this gray area is the sidewalk. And then it goes a little while. That's just the typical section. So let me go to the actual specific section that says from the barrier curb, if we wanted a guardrail, it would be here. And then some distance away would be a sidewalk. And then after another distance, there starts to be a kind of steep slope before that wall drop off. And in those areas, we would want to put a pedestrian railing anyway. It wouldn't stop a truck from going over, but it would stop a pedestrian or bicyclist from going over.
And that's helpful. Is there any ability to say put an enhanced pedestrian railing that's basically a car guarding? But I think that the negatives of having it right next to the road, forcing bicyclists who are right along there to be basically trapped between cars and this guard railing potentially seems, and this is a nice straightaway. So I mean, I can definitely see a reason to have guarding if there was like a sharp, hairpin turn type of a thing. Car doesn't see it, they're gonna crash into something, and better a guardrail than pedestrians or bicyclists. But if the worry is really on this straightaway, to not have somebody go all the way over past the sidewalk and into the steep drop-off area, it seems to me that if we're going to consider any type of guardrail, we'd be better off putting it outside of the walkway for pedestrians.
Is that possible, Sean, to have the guardrail constructed right immediately before the drop off instead of quite a few feet before the drop off and before the sidewalk?
Yeah, it kind of comes down to, what's this distance? Because you don't want a guardrail right next to a sidewalk either, where people be banging into it. But if you can get it, I don't know, 3-4 feet away from a sidewalk, that would be far better, I think, at least from a driver perspective. They'd have to try pretty hard to hit it. And from a snow removal perspective, it would be far, far preferable. I tend to agree on a straightaway. We don't often see this kind of consideration. So we can look into that.
Sean, is there enough room before the drop off? I drove out there today from the bottom. It's scary looking up. I was at PPD looking up the rock wall.
Yeah.
That's a really scary area to be falling over for pedestrians, bikers, or cars.
Okay.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if there's enough room before it starts dropping off to put in a stable guardrail or fence. I can't tell from this diagram.
Yeah, ordinarily, if we're going through that, we put it next to the road just because then it has the benefit of shielding, trees and people from errant vehicles. But in this case, I think the odds of that are pretty low anyway. I mean, like any street, somebody can leave the road and they can hit a
Right.
tree, or a pedestrian.
I guess what I'm seeing in this diagram is the slope going down. Is that an accurate description of
It
the
does go
drop off?
down. Yeah, this drops
It's-
off very steeply.
Right, and so is there enough room there to get the guardrail in before the drop off? That's
Well,
my-
I'll have to talk to the designer. So if the preference is, and I mean, they just drew something that's pretty normal, but if we do something that's sort of a hybrid between not putting one in and putting one in, put it in, but move it far over, as long as there's enough room for that, I would think that could be done.
Yeah, this section, it looks like 3 feet, Sean, because the big lines are 10 feet.
Yeah, the little ones are 2.
Okay.
So we
3
could,
feet there, but then you'd be right at the drop-off point and could be a challenge. That's something that they could, and I'd even give up a couple inches on the sidewalk going towards the road in this case, to
Yeah.
get a guardrail in there.
I would too.
Right. I mean, I I would hate to put in all sorts of guarding for the cars and then have a pedestrian or a bicyclist who takes to the sidewalk and have them go over. So, I mean, I think the pedestrian railing is necessary. And so if we need something there anyway, I'm thinking just enhance it so that it maybe could take the load of a car side swiping it a bit too. And we get the benefit of, protecting pedestrians primarily, but maybe it has a little added benefit of if a car goes that far off of the road, which, it seems very unlikely. I mean, granted, my neighborhood is not going to be quite as high speed maybe as Pleasant View Road, but Pleasant View Road isn't a high speed road.
yeah,
Well,
And-
45 miles an hour.
Right. It is higher speed than my subdivision. I get that, but it's not highway speeds. So we're talking about somebody's driving a little faster, and I don't know why. I mean, if people aren't driving onto my sidewalks in front of my house, I don't know why an extra 10 to 15 miles an hour would make them all of a sudden that much more likely to drive up onto the sidewalk on this straightaway either. But I don't want anybody, car or pedestrian or bicyclist, going over that cliff. So I do think the pedestrian railing is super important. And if we're going to do that anyway, I'm just saying, beef it up.
Can we?
yeah, I too don't think that it's very likely people will be driving off this at 35 miles an hour. We have other 35-mile-an-hour roads and people manage to stay on them. But, the nature of a mistake is fairly severe.
Yeah.
In a
Right.
really short distance, that's all.
I have a question.
Sorry, Susan.
Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I have a question about what's in place in Madison on University Avenue going west, where right after the stoplight, you go up a hill and there's sort of a bridge and there's a bike lane and a railing to protect the bikers from going over. Is there a guardrail there?
I'm not familiar with that, not enough to answer.
Yeah,
but
I
that would
haven't
be an
driven that in a
interesting
long
spot to
time.
look at.
But it seems like that's a slightly similar, nowhere near as big a drop off.
Mhm. I'll go take a look at that.
Sean, it seems to me another concern might be if someone was going fast enough and out of control enough to go up over the sidewalk and get to the point where you're going down that embankment, whether it's on the steep end or whether it's on the more gradual end, cars would come right down into that parking lot, would they not?
Yes.
Load would come down into that parking lot. And there might well be other cars or there might be pedestrians in that parking lot as well, which would seem to argue for some sort of guardrail protection there. To me, anyway, it does.
Right?
Yeah,
That's a good point.
Bob, when I drove out there today, the parking lot was filled. And that wall is a straight vertical going up wall with wire netting over it to keep small rocks from
Yeah.
coming down. And then there's all sorts of vertical cracks and horizontal cracks in it. It doesn't look very stable.
Yeah, I actually live in this neighborhood. I live right next door on Greenway Boulevard. So this has been a big concern for us. In fact, one of the projects that was supposed to be on Pleasant View Road, which was shelved, was just because of that particular reason. The 14-story building that was supposed to come
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
got shelved for that particular reason, because there is too much of a risk to that particular. In fact, my building has a retention wall right behind as well. And anything that happens up the hill, that retention rock wall will go. And then the entire thing is going to come plummeting down. Our buildings are right in the leeway of that. And PPD is just below us.
Mhm.
So even when the water flowed through during that storm, everything went right past my building into PPD next door.
Wow.
So that's, and another problem with Pleasant View as it is right now is Pleasant View Road itself, the visibility is very low for drivers, and there is no sidewalk right now. But the visibility as of now, with the way it's structured and with the trees, if you are driving, you're not going to be seeing much ahead of you until you turn and come into the corner, that stretch before the golf course, until the quarry. Until then, the visibility is pretty low back
Yeah.
there.
I should add here, Guthrie, one of the design changes is to lower that hill significantly by about 15 feet to cut that hill down. And that'll improve sight distance dramatically on the road.
Sean, when that road is constructed, though, a lot of the trees that you see there now, just above that magenta line, are going to be gone, aren't they?
Yes.
I think a lot of this up at the top would have
Yeah.
to get cleared out. Yeah.
Right. So that's going to be fewer things that could stop a car from
Correct.
potentially going over the sidewalk, going over the embankment also. Those things aren't going to be there anymore.
Right. We would put in normal like terrace trees between the curb and the sidewalk, and they'll take some time to mature.
20 years from now, they'll stop something, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, does it make sense to maybe have Sean ask the question of, can the guardrail be moved to where the pedestrian rail would be, and then just see what the designers say? Because they can look at, the structure of the landscape to make sure it can support such a thing. I would assume they'd be able to look at that, right, Sean, to make sure it's going to work.
Right. Yep. We can look into that. And,
Harry, I
and if
like
not,
that suggestion.
if not, I'll come back to the committee and we'll ask it a different way.
Okay.
well, if they can do it, do we want to say that is the committee's preference to have a guardrail placed in that location rather than right out on the road, if it's feasible to do it?
If that would be the committee's preference, that's what I'll ask. Yep.
Well,
That is my preference, but I guess I still would like it coming back here just so we are informed.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
Personally?
I don't know if I would be as supportive of the guardrail if it had to go closer to the, where basically closer to the road, and then there'd be a barrier for bikers and things like that. Makes me a little uncomfortable to have bikers potentially, heading down that road, and then all of a sudden they feel maybe uncomfortable on that road and they want to move to the sidewalk and they're not able to. I don't know. There's just lots of different scenarios where I don't know if that would be as good of an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I myself was trying to envision how I would feel about that if I were biking, and I don't know. I don't think I'd feel great just there.
Yeah, yeah.
Sean, could we get some information as to where, looking top down on this road, since it's going to be 4 lanes divided,
Mhm.
it's certainly wider than what, if you go out there, you see. So I'd like to know which side are they moving, expanding onto? I'm assuming it's the west side, since this is so close to PPD.
Yeah, so here you can see these really thin gray lines. There's kind of a set of gray lines. Do you see those?
Yeah,
So the middle of the road, at least in this spot, is more or less in the middle of the road.
the current road.
Correct. Yep. So the current road runs more or less along with the median
Okay, so
in this area.
So that means they're expanding on both sides.
Right.
That, to me, is more disturbing.
Closer to the
Terms-
golf course, we're growing
I'm not
more to
worried
the
about the golf
east
course.
than to the west, I would say.
Yeah, if they were going further west with the road, I'd be a lot more comfortable.
Well, to the west is right where that big ATC pole is.
Yeah,
um,
I know,
Up by Dick Hawkins' cell tower there. So
right.
going west is really problematic from an ATC line perspective. The relocation of that would be very costly.
Also, haven't we already approved this route?
Yeah,
right.
this is
We
set.
have, I guess I'm just trying to understand visually from what I've looked at where it is.
Mhm.
So we're going closer to PPD than we currently are.
Well, sure, it's just a much bigger road. It's going,
Yeah, that's
both,
why. I'm
it's going
concerned.
both ways from where it is. Yep.
All right,
I'd
so
like, yeah, I'd like to know how close to the drop off the sidewalk will be.
I'm not sure I know exactly on here where the drop off is, if it's represented by this line. This dashed one would be a slope intercept line. That just means where we're done grading.
Yeah, could you get the engineers to let us know?
Well, I can, but that's what those cross sections actually do. I suspect it's this longer line, but the cross sections will show us where the proposed sidewalk edge is in relation to the rock.
Okay,
all right, so Sean, at this point, do you have enough information? Do you want a motion on anything here or just?
I think that'd be good, yeah, if the committee
Okay.
has a preference
Sure.
to direct guardrail be included in the reconstruction design if it can be located combined with the pedestrian fencing on the backside of the sidewalk.
Okay,
Correct. That would be my motion to explore what that would, whether that's possible and what that would look like to have the automotive guardrail be collinear with the pedestrian pedestrian guardrail, I guess.
but would this take precedence if they say it's okay, they'll go ahead and not tell us? Or will
Oh,
they
that-
tell us about problems?
I think at the staff level, we'll figure out if that is feasible, and then I'll just come and tell you either way. Just as an update.
all right, so we have a motion. Is there a second to Robert's motion?
This is Carrie, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we will revisit this, Sean, when you have some additional information.
All right. Just making an extra note here. Okay. So we'll get back to our agenda. Gets us to number 3 for an ordinance change request for no parking on Park Street at the cul-de-sac near the Parisi Park driveway.
Seemed fairly self-explanatory.
Sean, is it just the cul-de-sac or that entire road from Park Place going up to the cul-de-sac?
No, there's some straightaway there that I think is useful for parking. I know.
Yeah, well, that's what I
burglars
mean.
like
The
to
no
park there.
parking. The no
Yeah.
parking is just on the cul-de-sac.
Right, and part of the straightaway that leads into the cul-de-sac, it's an odd shaped bulb there, but kind of that whole cul-de-sac. What we want to do is try to get cars away from where the bike path cuts through there and allow better access to the fire hydrant than we currently find some days, and stay away from the Parisi Park driveway.
Okay, do you have a map of this area? Because I drove up there today.
I don't
And
have
I
a
could-
current one.
I could see no parking on the actual bulb part of the cul-de-sac, but there were probably 30 cars up and down the street.
Mhm.
And I would hate to take away parking from that many people.
Right, so the proposal is just in the cul-de-sac.
That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yep, that's what we're proposing.
Okay, then I
This
would
is-
make that motion.
Sure. I'll second the motion, Susan.
All right, we have a motion and a second to add that parking restriction. Any further discussion with respect to the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the License and Ordinance Committee and the council. Okay,
And the last agenda is the fall newsletter, which due to some staffing issues this fall, we were way behind on, but we did get it pulled together and out. We just didn't get it to the committee first, which is our preference.
well, as long as it's out, I guess that's what's important, but it's
Yeah.
always a little tenuous to be looking at this when half of the city has already passed its final brush collection date, and we're getting the newsletter out telling them when it's going to be,
Yeah.
when it was.
So I think we got this out on October 1st
Okay.
on the internet.
Well, I thought it looked very informative, very businesslike, and much, to my mind anyway, much easier to read and not be distracted by other things. I thought it was put together very nicely.
All right, and again, in a better world, this would have come in the right order, but if there are any corrections to make, we can certainly repost this.
I didn't see any.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments, any questions, any?
No, I agree with the other commission members who've said this is really clearly written and laid out well. I don't have any recommended changes at this time.
Yeah, I don't either. I really like the hyperlinks to skip down to the sections. I think that works well.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay.
Just the
Well-
facts and nothing but the facts.
Yeah, I can't say our readership is mushrooming, but it's still good to have a source document somewhere. So,
Yeah, that way
Okay.
when people call in, it's nice to reference published guidance. I feel like that's always helpful.
right, exactly. So, and I would say two newspapers, Middleton Times. I don't know if I saw it in Middleton Times. Middleton Review did a terrific job helping us spread the word. So
Yeah,
That's appreciated.
well,
Um,
I would make a motion to approve this after the fact.
All right, I suppose that's appropriate. Do we have a second to Robert's motion?
Carl, I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the newsletter as it has been written and published. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and it's all taken care of.
Yeah, so that's the end of our agenda.
Okay,
This is Robert, motion to adjourn.
the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
This is Carrie, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you for a well-run and quick meeting.
Well, it was pretty easy tonight.